All right, case 6.
Okay, so right away, like at low power, you kind of see these like dilated spaces and that are large and kind of dermal lesion, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like thin-walled vascular spaces in the superficial kind of dermis, I guess. And they also have this like acanthosis to them. And you see this like I guess cholera and frog spawn, which is I
Yeah.
think the lymph fluid that's like the eosinophilic in the dilated spaces. And frog spawn I think means like multiple clustered like translucent spaces, which
Yeah,
is like the
usually that's like
dilated.
a clinical term, but it corresponds to like it looks like frog eggs on the skin surface to if you've got a good imagination, but those little eggs correspond to the individual blobs, I think, of dilated lymph-filled vessels, right?
Oh, and I guess like on higher power since we're there, it's like kind of bland
Yep.
endothelial cells. And again, you see like the pale pink proteinaceous fluid.
Yes, good.
Not a lot of blood cells, not a lot of atypia, cytologic atypia, not like endothelial multi-layering. I don't
Good.
see
Yes,
any
single
mitotic
layer, bland
activity.
endothelial cells. Excellent. A little bit of
Yeah.
hobnailing. Told you hobnailing's all the time. If you want to find it, you can find it.
This is oh right, hobnailing, but I didn't yeah, I didn't see it, but anything. Lymphangioma circumscriptum.
Yeah, so this is labeled as lymphangioma, but I think again the differential that you can consider is just like we talked about before: targetoid hemosiderotic hemangioma, aka hobnail hemangioma, lymphangioma circumscriptum, angiokeratoma, and if it were radiated skin, atypical vascular lesion, post-radiation AVL. So honestly, this one's labeled as lymphangioma, but if I had to vote and I was taking a test, it's the channels are caught almost completely caught up in the epidermis in some areas. There's a lot of blood in here. I would actually probably vote more towards angiokeratoma, but maybe they did a stain on this and found that they were actually staining like lymphatics. Again, I can't reliably tell them apart with definite, definitively. The good news is that they're both benign, right? Targetoid hemosiderotic is benign. All these things are benign. AVL is the only one that's somewhat not, it's not malignant, but it has some caveats that need to be brought up and some clinical information that's needed and follow up because of the radiation history. So in this case, if you did a D240 and it was positive, which I'm presuming must have been done since it's labeled this, lymphangioma. But this is another, I forgot to bring this up earlier, that in blood-filled spaces, sometimes the blood can wash out or settle out and look empty or look proteinaceous, in which case you'd say, oh, it looks like a lymphatic, but it's actually really a vascular channel where the blood came out. But you can also have the converse. Lymphangiomas can sometimes have blood that spills into them, either in vivo or during the biopsy procedure, and they can mimic vascular channels. So it's really hard to be sure to tell them apart without stains. One clue is if you see clusters of lymphocytes around the channels or even lymphs floating in the channels, that's a pretty good clue for actual lymphatics. So we do have lymphs around the channels here. That could also be because it's ulcerated. I don't know. I can't really tell. So I think this one you could, on a test, I think you could have a fair argument to say this is either lymphangioma or if you called this angiokeratoma, I would accept that for credit unless they told you it was D240 positive. Lymphangiomas, even though we call them lymphangioma, they are actually probably mostly malformations. And because of that, sometimes they have dilated channels that go deeper down. So this finding right here, these deeper dilated channels with proteinaceous fluid actually would be a point towards this actually being a lymphangioma. So I think this is a nice case because it highlights that in real life, there's a good bit of overlap between these entities. And again, the most important reason you may wonder, and I wondered before, derm path, we got to split all these things out. We're all splitters, or well, there's lumpers and there's splitters. People that like to say it's all the same thing, call it one name. Other people subdivide names. And the three main reasons to subdivide names, number one, the most important is because there's a clinical difference. It behaves different or is treated different. Infiltrative basal, more aggressive than superficial basal. So we use that because there's a difference clinically and the treatment is different potentially. Number two, we split things because it's important for the pathologist to know, or sometimes clinically we do this too. It's important to know, hey, entity A and B are actually the same thing, even though they look different, right? So that's another important reason. Like dermatofibroma, many of them have lots of different patterns, more or less all the same thing, and with a couple exceptions, they more or less have all the same treatment and prognostic considerations. So that's another reason we split. The third reason people split out entities into subtypes is because people want to get published, right? And it's funny, but it's also true. In any case, the reason that some of these all these nitpicky vascular lesion subtypes exist in the skin particularly is because, and Omar Sangueza told me this, I interviewed him like 12 years ago for the ASDP. He's a great derm path at Wake Forest and has a lot of interest in vascular lesions. And he explained that he thinks the reason a lot of these entities subtypes exist is because in the past there was a need to distinguish things from Kaposi sarcoma. Because in the AIDS epidemic, before we knew what HHV8 was or how to detect it, before there was an HHV8 immunostain, before we had heart therapy for AIDS, if you diagnosed Kaposi sarcoma in a young adult, basically that meant they had AIDS and they were going to die. So that was really sobering to hear that, because all that happened before I was in medicine, right? By the time I was in medicine, we knew what HHV8 was. We knew how to treat HIV. We were able to just say, oh, this is simple. Just put an HHV8 stain on it. But the reason many of these subtypes existed because Kaposi could look like this, right? So that's why people started subdividing and detecting all these subtypes, because they mimicked either Kaposi or sometimes angiosarcoma. So I thought that was really helpful context to make me a little bit less frustrated with why do we have to subdivide all these things. In honesty, it doesn't often matter if you subdivide it on the report line. If you called this angiokeratoma or lymphangioma, nothing bad's going to happen, right? If it's a single little lesion, no problem. But if the question was, is this Kaposi or not, then that could be a big problem, right? So in any case, and this is another one. If you had any doubt, I would not at all fault someone for doing an HHV8 here to make sure it's not Kaposi. Because up down here, this Kaposi could do this. There's almost like a little promontory sign, All right, so for the purposes of this is labeled lymphangioma. I don't know the history of the case, but I'm going to assume that it was positive for D240, but angiokeratoma would be a very reasonable consideration as well.